as we all know, the festive season is a time of celebration. It's a time to unwind and be surrounded by loved ones and rejoice in the end of a fruitful year. However, this might not be the case for those experiencing loneliness, depression, anxiety, or simply having nothing to celebrate. How then does one celebrate Christmas and New Year amidst all of this? Well, here to help us answer this question and understand why this may be such a stressful time of the year for so many people is the South African Depression and Anxiety Group's expert psychologist, Jeremy Bayer. Jeremy, it's good to have you. Welcome to Morning Live.
Good morning. Thank you very much for being here.
So, we talk about this time of the year, and like I said in the introduction, it is a time for celebration, it's a time for family, but when you don't have any of that, it can be one of the loneliest and most depressing times, I imagine.
It is very lonely, yes, and there are things that exacerbate the loneliness. For example, going on Facebook, for example, there's a common thing at the end of the year that everyone's having a good time and that you are alone in the boat. So you're scrolling down Facebook and you see this one's by the beach and this one's over there, and all you see is yourself bad, and you think everyone's great. So the first reaction is regret. They all good, mine's all bad, and I'm just alone, and you can't see any good out of it. How do I improve this? How do I socialize if everyone's away and I'm alone in this boat? That's the most important thing.
Yeah, you do. You think you're the only one going through it, but you're not. I mean, that's something that I suppose that you keep telling people to put in their minds, is to understand that you're not the only person in the situation.
Yeah, well, the thing is, not as many people are going away. A lot of people have decided to stay home. Because economically things are so tight at the moment, people are rather saving for their children's, perhaps their university expenses or for school next year. So actually, Christmas and this festive season actually brings with it a lot of stress. For example, the other day I did a workshop on fatigue and lifestyle management. And there was a lot of stress around that they've got to provide for Christmas, all the food, all the gifts, and actually Christmas is creating a lot of stress. So it's not as embraced as it used to be from things that I've heard. And yeah, there's a lot of anxiety, mostly around finances. How do I spend? How do I plan? How do I set goals for this time, given what's coming next year?
Yeah. What do you tell people that are in a position like that?
Well, the first thing I'll do as a psychologist is assess the severity of the symptoms. So if the anxiety or the stress of it has become so bad, I'll then recommend counselling. If it's just become too bad, for instance, if it's affecting sleep patterns, if it's affecting appetite, social interaction, if they're not taking part in activities that they used to do, or they're just lacking in energy, I'll take those symptoms into account and maybe think, okay, this is just simply too bad. I'd recommend counselling. But other things I would recommend is to seek company, whether it's a religious affiliation, perhaps join a religious group, a sports club, and then acknowledge your feelings instead of holding this back to say, actually, this is a time for family. My family's here to listen to me. So you've been alone for a while. Maybe this is a time to share my feelings with my family. But conversely, if you've had a very stressful year and you relied on heavily, maybe this is a time to say no as well. To say, I'm going to use this time to practice self-care, whether it's breathing techniques, whether it's relaxation, whether it's just to have this time for myself. So you can do it both ways. And then to also question your social group. Think about it. If you're always alone at the end of the year, if this happens frequently, ask yourself, are my friends really my friends? Yeah. Just say, actually, maybe this is a crossroads in my life to say, okay, maybe I should just be fishing in another pond. Other things you could do is volunteer work. Like I said earlier, avoid social comparison. And I'm not going to say avoid social media because that's difficult, but minimize, because it can just chip away at the self-esteem. And set aside differences. You can use this opportunity if there are family issues to say, okay, let's use this Christmas to talk to each other, to set aside differences, and how can we improve our situation?
Yeah, well, I like what you're saying. I mean, just try and take control of your life. I mean, if there's anything of doing that you can go, like you say, volunteer on Christmas Day, go and visit people in hospital, go and visit people in old age homes. I mean, that's another issue where people just get forgotten. Orphanages, places like that perhaps you can fill other people's lives while you're filling your life at the same time. I mean, it's perhaps one of the solutions, but you have to find your own solution, I suppose.
Well, that's it. And an activity like that gives you meaning.
Yeah, it does.
Sometimes sitting at home doing nothing may not be the answer, or even just being on holiday somewhere. You're actually making a difference in someone's life.
Yeah.
Often I say, when people look back at the year and they say, well, I should have done this and I haven't done that, but rather say, twist it around and say, just before you go to bed, say to yourself, have I made a positive impact on someone's life over the year? And say, actually, no, I have had a good year. But people have regrets about, I haven't reached my financial goals. So if that example that you're giving about volunteer work and doing that gives you meaning to say, actually, I may not be away or in a different place geographically, but I'm having a positive influence in someone's life, which is what part of the festive season is about. Influencing other people and giving back. Exactly.
It certainly is. Do you find that at this time of the year that your call numbers go up, that you experience a lot more suicides at this time and or attempted suicides?
Unfortunately, yes. Suicides, talking about suicide, talking about loneliness, high levels of anxiety. Remember, the start of stress is change. So if you've perhaps recently divorced or recently widowed or simply broken up, it's now your first festive season alone. So it's how am I going to get through this period and get through this change? So unfortunate to say that the calls are up.
Yeah, they're big. It's very, very sad to hear that. And I also imagine, and you did mention this in one of your previous answers, that people are disappointed in themselves and they're disappointed in what they haven't achieved, and going into the new year perhaps already feeling a little bit bleak for what lies ahead of them. But what are those coping mechanisms that you give people, especially going into the new year? What are some of those tips and those things that we can use going forward where we can change our path and our destiny and who we are?
So first want to touch on self-esteem versus self-confidence. Okay, so a lot of people attach their what they do with their identity. So they look back at the year they haven't achieved, and then they'll say, I'm worthless, I'm inadequate. Self-esteem is about who we are. Self-confidence is about what we do. So if someone feels they haven't quite performed, which is something you do, which relates to confidence, they'll attack the self-esteem. So my message to people is, if you've had a bad day, this has got nothing to do with your self-worth. You've just had a bad day. Don't fall into the trap of short-term thinking. Think about all the hard work you've done to get to where you are. That's the first thing. Secondly, think about what the year's done in terms of building your CV. In other words, not what you've lost, but what you've gained. Gain in terms of the ability to cope with pressure, the ability to, your teamwork abilities. Am I a better team player? Have I learnt about my industry? Have I increased my knowledge? Not just I haven't reached my financial goal, therefore bad year. Second thing is effective goal setting. Okay, so it's process orientated, it's focused, it gives you motivation. So I strongly recommend to people, which is goal setting. Set some financial goals, get some advice from a financial plan if you're highly anxious. And like I said earlier, acknowledge your feelings. If you're highly anxious and feeling lonely, seek a therapist or like I say, a religious affiliation or something like that. Because when it comes to trauma, support is huge.
All right, well, there's also that helpline that we've got on the screen. Please use it at this time if you feel that that's what you need. 0800 121314. And there is somebody there on the other side of the line that can help you and just talk to you, because sometimes that's all you need is just a reasonable voice to talk you through it when there's no one else to listen to. Jeremy Bear, thank you very, very much for joining us here on the program.
Thank you.
Jeremy is a SADC expert psychologist. And again, just that number, I'm going to repeat it as we go into an ad break, 0800 121314. We'll see you after this.